The bell above the door of Grimwald's Curiosities jangled, an eerie melody that seemed to echo longer than it should have. James shuddered as he stepped inside, the shop's musty air wrapping around him like a damp, heavy cloak. The store was a labyrinth of ancient relics and peculiar artifacts, each item appearing as though it held a dark secret. James was a collector of oddities, and Grimwald's was a well-known haunt among those with a taste for the macabre. He had heard rumors of the shop's haunted reputation, but dismissed them as mere tales to scare away the faint-hearted. Tonight, however, something felt different. As he wandered between the cluttered aisles, a sense of unease gnawed at the edges of his mind. The antique store was filled with all manner of items: rusted swords, dusty books, and tarnished jewelry. But one item in particular caught his eye: a porcelain plate with an intricate floral design. It seemed out of place amidst the darker relics. He picked it up, and a chill ran through his fingers. The plate was cold, unnaturally so, and an odd sense of dread washed over him as he held it. "Ah, I see you found something interesting," a voice croaked from the shadows. James turned to see Mr. Grimwald, the shop's owner, emerging from the back room. His eyes were unsettling, dark and piercing, as if they could see into one's soul. "It's a beautiful plate," James said, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Where did it come from?" Mr. Grimwald's lips curled into a sinister smile. "That plate has a rather tragic history. It once belonged to a woman who was known for her beauty and kindness. She was murdered, stabbed in the back, by someone she trusted. They say her spirit haunts that very plate, seeking vengeance." James laughed nervously, putting the plate back on the shelf. "Sounds like a good story to sell antiques." Mr. Grimwald's smile faded, replaced by a look of grave seriousness. "Believe what you will, young man, but know this: every item in this shop has a story, and not all stories have happy endings." Deciding it was best to leave, James thanked Mr. Grimwald and made his way toward the exit. As he passed by a dusty mirror, he caught a glimpse of something unsettling. Reflected in the glass was not his own face, but that of a woman. Her eyes wide with terror, her mouth frozen in a silent scream. He spun around, but the store was empty save for Mr. Grimwald, who watched him with a knowing gaze. Heart pounding, James hurried out of the shop and into the cold night air. He tried to shake off the feeling, but the image of the terrified woman lingered in his mind. That night, sleep eluded him. He kept replaying the events in his head, trying to rationalize what he had seen. The next day, James found himself drawn back to Grimwald's Curiosities. He couldn't explain it, but something compelled him to return. As he entered the shop, the bell's eerie jangle sent a shiver down his spine. This time, Mr. Grimwald was nowhere to be seen. James walked through the aisles, feeling a growing sense of dread. He stopped in front of the plate, its floral design now appearing more sinister than beautiful. He reached out to touch it, and a sharp pain shot through his hand. He pulled back, seeing a deep gash on his palm, blood dripping onto the floor. "Help me," a voice whispered, so faint that James thought he had imagined it. He looked around, but the shop was empty. The voice came again, more insistent. "Help me." James followed the voice to the back of the store, where a heavy curtain concealed another room. He hesitated before pulling it aside, revealing a small, dimly lit space. In the center of the room was a wooden chest, ancient and covered in strange symbols. The voice seemed to emanate from within. With trembling hands, James opened the chest. Inside, he found a collection of old photographs. Each one depicted the same woman from the mirror, beautiful, kind-looking, and unmistakably marked by fear. Among the photos was a diary. James picked it up and began to read, his heart racing. The diary belonged to the murdered woman, Eleanor. Her final entry spoke of a growing paranoia, a sense of being watched. She wrote about a man she trusted, a man who ultimately betrayed her. As James read the last entry, a horrifying realization dawned on him. "I know he will come for me tonight," Eleanor had written. "If you find this, please avenge my death." A cold hand gripped James's shoulder, and he spun around to see Mr. Grimwald standing behind him, eyes filled with malevolence.
I told you, every item has a story,
he hissed. James tried to move but found himself paralyzed. Grimwald's grip tightened, and the room seemed to spin. Shadows danced on the walls, and the air grew thick with the stench of decay. "You should have stayed away," Grimwald whispered, his voice echoing in James's mind. "Now, you will join her." The room went dark, and James felt a searing pain in his back, as if a blade had been plunged into him. His vision blurred, and the last thing he saw was the face of the woman in the mirror, her eyes filled with sorrow. When James's body was found days later, the police were baffled. There was no sign of forced entry, no indication of a struggle. The only clue was a single porcelain plate, shattered on the floor, its floral design now smeared with blood. Grimwald's Curiosities remained open, a haven for those drawn to the macabre. And somewhere in the depths of the store, a new photograph joined the others, a picture of James, his eyes wide with terror, forever trapped in a silent scream.